is people are like, well, why does COP underwhelm, or why does it disappoint in the first place? Like, it's important for us to understand why. A lot of people just say, oh, it's just the oil lobby, it's big ag, it's all of these things. You know, they're paying off all of these systems, and it's corrupt, and all these people are corrupt, and that's why COP fails us. Now, it's not to say that it's not to say that those things aren't a factor. Especially, here's something that I learned. This blew my mind on this trip. I had no idea. So we have long known that big ag, factory farming, etc., our food systems are massive contributors of climate change. And we also know that they have enormous corrupting lobbies in the United States, on Congress, and all over the place, right? Not just limited to the United States. We've known that. I've known that. But what I did not know, and this was something that a member had shared with me, is that there have been periods, including in the present, that the amount of money that big ag spends on lobbyists in Congress is more than even defense lobbying, defense contractors spend. I had no idea. I always thought that defense contracting and all of that was probably one of the number one lobbies in Washington, and it is, of course, extremely, extremely powerful. But I didn't know that big ag often has more lobbyist dollars in influencing U.S. policy than even defense does. Which was, and says, who is big ag? Big ag is big agriculture. So factory farms, food systems, etc. When you go to the store and you buy chicken from, Purdue Farms, or these huge factories, factory farming, when we talk about like Monsanto and monocrops and all of those things, like that's big factory farming, not small farms, not local farms, not any of those things, but the big, massive stuff. So like, these are the bad news, right? That these lobbies are very, very corrupting. But what I also kind of saw at COP is that that's not the sole reason, actually, why things can be disappointing, outcomes can be disappointing on climate change. And again, I'm starting with the bad news, but I am going to end with good news. So don't get too, don't be too sad, okay? Because I think that the moment we give up hope is the moment we're locked in with bad outcomes, okay? So I'm not here to also BS you and be like, oh, everything's gonna be fine. No, I'm not here to tell you that either. So anyways, why does it overwhelm? Yes, there's the lobbying piece that a lot of people talk about. And I don't want to underwhelm that. But I also wanna highlight the mechanisms through which that lobbying occurs, because it's not just like a bunch of lobbyists go to COP and they're in the room and they're like, this is something that I learned when I got to Congress too, is that in our collective imagination, we all know that money in politics is very corrupting. We all know that lobbying negatively influences our outcomes, but we don't really understand how lobbying actually works. We think that, for example, in Congress, we think that lobbyists will, like if there's a big vote coming up, we think that lobbyists will call a member of Congress and they'll say, you better vote for this, and if you don't, then like it's all over and all this other stuff. And like, yeah, some of that does happen, but it's actually not that heavy-handed. It's not that cartoonish. It works in very other kinds of ways.